Belarus. I'm really happy to be here together to talk about this important issue that's not often enough in the news. I'm really happy to talk and assess the political and societal situation here. Before introducing the guest, welcome also. I'm Emiel Bongaerts, working for the European Forum for Democracy and Solidarity as a project manager. I'll be hosting today's session. And before introducing our two guests here, some notes for this session is that it's, of course, a Q&A session. So welcome also to the public. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and I will forward them to our speakers here. And you can also rewatch this webinar, share it with any whom you would like, and that would be much appreciated. So today we'll talk about the situation in and around Belarus, especially after the release of many important and esteemed political prisoners. And I will do that with two guests. So welcome, Max Boyka. You're a member of Maladaya Gramada. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. The youth organization of the Social Democrats in and outside Belarus. So welcome. Thanks for joining, Max.
Thank you for the invitation.
And also Ilya Admiral is here. You're the chairman of the Belarusians in Netherlands organization, I think also in short MARA, right? So working to connect and organize with all the Belarusians who are currently in the Netherlands, which is yeah, great work you're doing there. So thank you also so much for joining, Ilya.
Thank you for the invite, Emil.
It's a pleasure. So we'll discuss a couple of questions, and of course, going also through the Q&A later on in this session. And maybe just to start with you, Ilya, about this situation on the political prisoners who have been released. So can you give a bit of an overview on what happened last couple of months and what's the status of these political prisoners that have been released by the Lukashenka government?
Yeah, thanks so much, Emil. I think it's, of course, interesting to see what has happened in Belarus in the last couple of months, and in broader view, last couple 6 months. Because in the summer we had the release of Sergei Tikhanovsky, the husband of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, and this has been broken by United States and the envoy there. And the talks have been continuing through the autumn and the release of the political prisoners in December. And I will say it's more like, instead of release, it's more expulsion of Belarusians into Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine, rather than release. You know, people were just kind of sent away from prisons to the countries, and their documents have been ripped apart. The people just became stateless once they crossed the border in general. I think you have to look at a couple things there. There's, of course, a couple big names, Maria Kolesnikova, Babarika, who were released, and they're, you know, they used to be movement leaders, so they have to find footing again in the movements. And the second of, quite a lot of people had short-term sentences left. So quite a few people, they had like a month left to go or 2 months left to go. So if you look in a broader sense, some people were already waiting to be home rather than being, you know, moved to Poland or moved to Ukraine into a nightmare scenario where they have no documents, where they had to be helped, rather than being at home with their families where they're almost there. So from that side, of course, we're very happy for a couple of them. But on the other side, the lifting of economical sanctions on potash for Belarus, it's going to help the regime to contain itself for much longer now. Because they were strapped for cash, they were needing cash, they were needing more money to sustain the apparatus going. Because Russia is also not rich anymore. Russian money is also running dry, and there are more and more pressure from Russian society, Russian KGB and Putin to kind of incorporate Belarus into Russia. So there's three things going on at the same time. What we're seeing from the one side, you know, there has been Trump talks with Putin, which kind of Putin wants to stop the war. Putin wants to use Lukashenko as the middleman to stop this war. There has been the lifting of the sanctions on the other side, so helping the government to get money again for potash, subsidize the government basically, and the release of political prisoners to kind of give opposition also things to worry about, because now in opposition you have more people and less kind of funding around opposition. So I will say it's going to look interesting how we're going to handle in this year, with more people in Poland, in Ukraine, and also in what happening is in Lithuania is also interesting to kind of cover coming months.
Yeah, thanks, Ilya, for this introduction and these first remarks. And just for clarification, potash is like a huge fertilizer
Yeah,
company, right? Which is one of the main export products of produce of Belarus.
yeah. The Belaruskali is a national organization, which kind of 30% of the budget, I would say, comes into the KGB directly. So it's very big money we're speaking about, and because also of harsh winters, potash is also needed as fertilizer, as also salt across European highways or American highways.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thanks. Max, so how do you perceive the expulsion of these political prisoners? As Ilya also said, like some people that had not so much time on their sentence still. There are a couple of really high level figures among these prisoners. Were you surprised when these people were released in the last couple of months?
Well, if about the surprising, so I would say that the situation, like for nearly 4 years, yeah, after 2020, releases were extremely rare. So people were freed primarily upon the expiration of the sentences, and the situation began to shift in the summer of 2024. So Alexander signed like a series of pardon decrees, which were officially like attributed to humanitarian considerations. So it's kind of consideration about the illness, about the age, about having children. However, political prisoners had begun to die in prison, and I believe the regime didn't want to take on any further like reputational risks. It was a move like designed as a public signal to the West, like I'm ready for the negotiations. And in 2025, Donald Trump administration used this kind of sign to make the deal. And the release took place like as transactional character, as Ilya mentioned. So like Donald Trump really want to won a Nobel Prize. So probably that was one of the like main motivation for US administration.
Yeah, thanks. And how is there any sight on how many political prisoners there are still now in Belarus? What are the numbers? Because as I kind of perceived last year, it's difficult because many people are also not said to be officially political prisoner, but are in prison for political reasons. So there were thousands of people in prisons, I believe, like as of end of last year. Like, what's the current status, and would you expect any more of these explosions coming up in the coming months? What do you think, Max?
Mhm. As I remember, so we have right now near 1,000 political prisoners in Belarus, but they're like officially the official number. I know that different actors in the NGO who like try to like collect this information, struggling with this issue, like to mark them all because less contacts in Belarus, people are afraid to like collect such information. And people who were released from the prison, they say that the real number is much more bigger. So it's bigger, and we don't really know the like real figures.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there are still many, many people imprisoned at the
Yes,
moment.
yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like they're afraid to like mark themselves as political prisoners, and sometimes they are like not afraid, but their relatives afraid to say the real situation on them. So this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah, I mean, there's also pressure from KGB and the police around them, right? You know, they
Yeah.
get daily oppressed, the family get daily oppressed, they get searched, the houses get searched. So there's oppression around even the families of political prisoners, and political prisoners talk to each other, and they, or the prisoners, and they say, don't go for that because then your family will be on constant surveillance. So I think people are also afraid of being in this position.
yeah, and that status, and also a situation within the prisons. Of course, it's a terrible in health wise. Also, people who are in isolation for years on end. And I also wanted to ask Max, to you as a follow-up question also, what's currently known about the status of also a prominent opposition figure that had been expelled as well I think in October, November, Mikola Statkevich, former presidential candidate for the Social Democratic Party. But he went back into Belarus and was put in isolation again illegally. Is there currently anything known about his situation, or is he just back into in illegal imprisonment again?
Yeah, he was imprisoned again, and that's all we know about him. Yeah, so for right now, we don't have like a lot of information. Probably his condition is not the best in the prison because of this situation that he did.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was already held incommunicado for years, right? Before
Yeah.
this happened. So it shows even more like how important it is to keep the attention on the people who are still imprisoned, and that the situation is far from over still. Although some people were expelled, as you also said, right?
Yeah, I would say that yeah, we should like strongly try to like collect all information about the political prisoners because we can be like in such situation when in kind of this bargain of the between USA administration and Lukashenko regime. So probably we can be in situation when Lukashenko can release all like known political prisoners, and but we will have like, for example, he can like one of like 500 and say that others are criminals, and he like so the his political situation for him can be changed like drastically, but for people the situation, the repression still continue, and we can be in situations that like Lukashenko is now is like a person who can be like which can be dealable with some like sort of things, but nothing like really changed in case of like some institutional things in Belarus.
Yeah,
So,
so yeah, so as you clearly say, like this normalization of relations that seem to be starting in some way or form is really based on one moment, which is really being used also by the regime to, well, there are no structural changes whatsoever. Maybe before going into like more geopolitical kind of play between the US, as you also already alluded to, Ilya, US, EU, Belarus, Russia, the war in Ukraine. So maybe before going there a bit more on the people who were expelled, like, can you tell a bit more, Ilya, about who these figures are and what they mean for Belarusian opposition, like people like Viktor Babarika, Sergei Tsikhanouski, Maria Kolesnikava, like what's their role in the Belarusian opposition, and how do they currently also communicate after they have been expelled?
I think you have to also think about one more person is Satkevich, who was
Mm.
released, but then he walked right back. Right, that there is also one person who is still in prison and who has also a bit more backing, I will say. And you have the Nobel Peace Prize winner was also released.
Yeah, which is Ales Bialiatsky. Yeah.
Last year. You have a variety of people, and I think first of all they will need some moral help as well because they've been in isolation for last 3 to 4 years, and it will take time for them to kind of return into whatever position they would like to have. I think in a variety of cases, you have the family members, and you have the friends who've been advocating for release of Maria Kolesnikova or Babarika, and these campaigns can prolong into releasing also other political prisoners. I think it's also noteworthy to say that in last year, there has been released 100 political prisoners, but there have been arrested also over 400 people in relation towards these cases. And you don't have any more open court system where they've written out what has been happening. You know, before at least you could go back and you see what had been in court cases, and you could see why people have been arrested. This has been not anymore documented. So people have been now arrested, getting fined or getting house arrests for the protests they've been doing in 2020, still to this day. So even if you think the normalization can be achieved, to this day, there is no human rights organizations in Belarus. There are no human rights lawyers in Belarus. And so you cannot really start talking about normalization if these two things are not even there. And I think that will be kind of hoping the point of the newly released political prisoners, that this government is not to be reasoned with. Even if they were going to release more political prisoners, new political prisoners are waiting there. It's like conveyor belt, and there is more coming. So I think where Ales Bialiatski will hammer on is to continue isolate the regime, continue to sanction the regime until there will be change of regime in Belarus. That this is the only way. Of course, Belarus is now becoming more a vassal state of Russia, and you'll see more troop placement there. So it's hard to see what will happen in Belarus and how we can address that with the political prisoners that are released. So it's going to be a very interesting time. We need to kind of keep support on Ukraine, keep sanctions for Belarus. That is the only two visions that I have, and kind of educate the young Belarusians with help of Maxim, of course, that there are other ways rather than military ways in future Belarus.
Now, do you mean like other ways as military ways? Can you?
Yeah, as you see, there's a military buildup in the last 2 years around Belarus. There's more and more stations of a variety of Russian troops. There has been more and more kind of investments from Russian side into Belarusian military to kind of get it more upgraded to a standard. There has been, of course, a variety of jokes around Belarusian military, but still it has the numbers, and it has to be upgraded for the Russian plans around, the Baltic states, and what variety of secret services have even said, that Belarus is a vassal state of Russia to go further in Europe, to escalate more conflicts around Europe, as it is, bordered with a variety of countries in the European Union.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe to continue on that question, going to watch more of like the geopolitical play around Belarus, and also the economic situation and the sanctions. Max, can you tell a bit about, of course, Ilya already alluded a little bit to it with the sanctions, the Americans saying that they will relieve some sanctions around these potash companies, these main fertilizer companies. Like, what's the current situation around the sanctions, and what would it mean, the lifting of these sanctions for the Belarusian economy? And do you expect the EU also to move into this direction at the moment?
So yeah, sanctions became sectoral like after 2021 and 22. So export of potash fertilizers and like petroleum products, timber to the EU, like were blocked. So one more thing that is quite crucial is that the Belarusian banking system also partially disconnected from the SWIFT. That can be a thing that can be placed in some of the bargain between America, European Union, and Belarus. That's lifting of the sanctions on the potash is quite interesting because there is not total lifting of the sanctions, because we have ports in Lithuania where usually they were one of the logistic way to export in other countries. So and we see kind of interesting things as like office of the Svetlana Tikhanovskaya moved from Lithuania right now, and I'm not sure what we can predict on there, what kind of things will happen in the next few months on the first on the potash, because we have some kind of saying that politics toward Belarusian democratic opposition is changing, and what will go on here. Let's see. But of course, as Ilya mentioned, if Lithuanian ports will be opened, that will strong Belarusian economy and diverse some risk in such situation. So yeah, let's see.
Which is a situation that would strengthen the Lukashenko regime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for right now, also I can add that if we speak about the sanctions and like structure of the economy. The European and Ukrainian markets were lost, and like yeah, geography of the economy is changing now. Like near 60-70% of the exports are directed toward Russia. There are also active attempts to compensate for the loss of European markets, like by pivoting to the China, to the Africa and Central Asia. And yeah, we see that European Union like still wants to like only tell with Lukashenka in case of only institutional changes, but it will depend on the future political situation.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe can you tell a bit more, Max, about what you mentioned about the democratic opposition relocating partially from Lithuania to Poland? What's the situation there?
Yeah, the situation that a couple of months ago, Lithuanian government decided to decrease diplomatic status of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, and they are not spending so much money on the guarding her and her like office. So it was made a decision by her team to move the office to the Poland, to the Warsaw. So right now she's here. Yeah, actually, I'm right now in Warsaw. So yeah, and this kind of situation, yeah, where it like did we change in the like geographically in the situation of the position, because more and more concentration like right now in the Poland in Warsaw.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there was also news about the relationship between the democratic opposition in exile and the Ukrainian government of Zelensky, that it has significantly improved in the last couple of months and time. Do you share that assessment, Max? Like that there is now more connection also between the Ukrainian government and for example, the office of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya?
Mhm. I would say it's for me personally, it's hard to say that it's kind of renew this kind of relations. I would say it's more like a start of this relation,
Mm.
because Belarusian democratic forces were not like previously a priority for the Zelensky administration, and in my opinion, this approach was only like developed by the last year. We have seen that Zelensky publicly addresses the Belarusian people for some time. He like made a lot of speeches, which like directly to Belarus and like try to admire them on the uprising and so on. But to implement something or anything, you need to an actor on both sides, and probably they like see that democratic forces can be such an actor from Belarusian sides. At the beginning of the war, the Ukrainian government didn't have time to address like the Belarusian issue like more strategically. So communication was difficult at the level of civil society and political organizations. But there was like considerable skepticism regarding individuals like with Belarusian citizenships. So it's kind of understandable because of the missiles missiles were launched from the Belarusian territory, and for right now, that's not happening. So relations are improving. One initiative which our organization also took part is conference of Ostrozhskis. It was held in the Kiev. We also met with civil society organizations, with politicians of the Ukrainians, and discuss our relationships, how to build trying to find some common ground, try to build something issues that can like improve the Russians' positions in Ukraine, and also can support Ukraine in their fighting against Russia. So yeah, in my opinion, the closer we're getting to sign like some peace in the like context of the Russian-Ukrainian war, the more like prominent the issue of Belarus will be. For Ukraine, of course, it's a security issue, and the democratic Belarus also a Ukraine interest, and they probably they should participate in this process. Maybe not everyone realizes this yet, but they will come to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the clear answer, Max. And also, a lot of stuff, as always, of course, in politics and international politics comes together with the US being very involved in some ways or forms, also using this expulsion of political prisoners in a symbolic way of trying to bring Lukashenka back into kind of the international sphere and completely moving aside from any human rights or democratic considerations with many, many people still imprisoned. And as Ilya also said, like no reason whatsoever to see that institutionally or regarding human rights, anything has changed structurally. And of course, we've seen how the US has currently positioned itself like globally with also the Board of Peace, where Belarus was also invited, and they also accepted this. So it shows also that the European Union must be very, very careful in this situation to keep upholding democratic values and human rights values vis-a-vis the opposition in Belarus. So, Ilya, that would also be my question to you. Like, do you foresee what do you currently foresee regarding the role of the EU? Do you see the EU moving in kind of similar directions as the US at this stage? And what's your take there?
I think in European Union, there's a couple of things to think about. You have the Hungary and Slovakia options, right? Fico just sent his ambassador, who was the ex-president of Slovakia, who has very interesting ties to Russia, it seems like. And then, of course, the Hungary question. Let's hope for better results in April. But
Yeah, because the foreign minister of Hungary also visited Minsk last year, right?
yeah. There is a good cooperation between Belarus and Hungary, and now Slovakia and Belarus. But outside of those two countries, another kind of country is Lithuania, of course, because of what is happening there with the government and the Russian ties of their party and the Russian disinformation in Lithuania. I think outside of those three, you have pretty much unanimous view of the European Union into Belarus. Um, so it kind of helps that there is unified view that we need to support Belarusian democratic opposition. To what extent that goes, that will be interesting to see this year. Again, because you don't have total veto, because you have veto powers in European Union, and now you have Slovakia and Hungary doing that. How that will be addressed. You also have, if you're speaking about Ukraine, you have Belarusian forces fighting in Ukraine in the front lines. So it will be interesting also to support those and continue to support those, really, because I think Belarusian independence does rely on Ukrainian sovereignty, and one cannot go without the other, from my point of view. So I hope European Union managed to continue to support Ukraine, continues to support Belarusian opposition, but it's going to be very interesting to see how they will guide through the questions of Slovakia and Hungary.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you clearly say, the a just peace for Ukraine is very much interlinked with a just also situation regarding the political relations of the EU with Belarus and normalization, which is going from the US also is very much putting themselves outside of any human rights and democratic standards that they before kind of said to uphold. And you mentioned it's the Kalinowski regiment, right, Ilya, that you mentioned that they're fighting in Ukraine with how many people? Like a couple of thousand of soldiers even, right?
Yeah, it is. I think either maybe second biggest foreigner division. There's a couple of regiments, and Kalinowski is the biggest one. And there are losses every week. Of course, it's quite still big, but they're fighting with, I will say, almost minimum resources, and yet they're standing quite strong. And it's very noteworthy, that Tikhanovsky is now also in talk with Zelensky. There is more support for these forces. There's more acknowledgement what Belarusian forces have been doing also in front lines. But that also has to reflect in European Union talk, because if we talk about in the sovereignty of Belarus, it is also in position of European Union for the safety of the European Union. to have more clear Belarus.
Yeah,
We have,
yeah, exactly.
1,000 troops in Belarus already, stationed ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons since shortly as well. These developments are, they put pressure on a conflict zone. They put pressure on defense line of European Union and the NATO.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it also ties into a question I got from the chat because time is going quite quickly. We're around a bit more than 10 minutes left. Is a question about the Russian integration of Belarus. Also, what you mentioned in the beginning, Ilya. So I also want to start the question with you. The question is, can you tell a bit about these regional offices that are opened by Russia in Belarus? Does it mean anything regarding this goal of integration by Russia that Belarus becomes kind of a part of a union in a way? What's the status of that?
Yeah, I think the union question is very interesting. It kind of really backfired to Lukashenko because Lukashenko had great grand ideas about the union state in the 90s, and it kind of was let it be for 30 years until Putin found out that there's one of the tools that he can use to pressure Lukashenko into it. There is a variety of offices are being created. Of course, you have the KGB office that has been, working more intensely with Belarusian KGB. Sorry, Russian FSB with
Mm.
Belarusian KGB. And you see more surveillance and a variety of tools that have been used in Russia that have been happening in Belarus. So there's been integration of more the police side right now, I will say. And coming year, there will be more talks on Russian side about the forces and security of Belarusian country. You'll see more and more, I think, coming weeks and months, kind of Russian disinformation about the security of Belarus, and that the Western side will try to take away the stability of Belarus. And I'm quite sure there will be Shoigu who will say that, Zakharov will say this, and Lavrov will say this. Variety of people in Russia will start saying it, kind of to try to influence that Belarus needs more security from Russia, that they need more troops, that they need more support, that they need more support as either disinformation or troops or FSB forces, whatever the forces will be. It is quite scary thought that Belarus becomes more totalitarian police state, even if it's hard to imagine that, Belarus is already been said the biggest open air prison of Europe, how that will reflect into the country. So for me, it's very intriguing, but also quite scary to think about it.
Yeah, thanks. Do you have anything to add, Max, to this?
Yeah, in case of this kind of centers that recently opened in the not like in the cities of the Belarus, so it's more like centers of influence in the like soft influence, some cultural centers which they're trying to operate inside Belarus more deeply.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it serves like multiple goals there from Russia. And another question I got is, and I wanted to ask it to you, Max, is regarding these like balloons, smuggle balloons that have been, yeah, put up by the Belarus regime at the Lithuanian border. So what's the current status of those balloons, and what's the tactic behind those?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of, in my opinion, tactic to increase this intense between Lithuanian society and Belarusians, because not only this happens, but also, as we can remember, migrant crisis, also spreading of the disinformation about the Litvinism, so it's kind of ideology that's shared that Lithuania is like part of the Belarus and like some kind of these things. So the Russians try to spread this disinformation in Lithuania to like also pushed out Belarusians out of the Lithuania. So probably even they somehow achieved, because as we heard about this Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. And also this kind of small things that they're trying to like increase the risk. This small and these balloons are part of the things that when they like open like race in the air, they Lithuanian sensors like detective that's like kind of threat, and airport is closing, and a lot of things that happened. Like people are not very happy with these things, so it's more like part of the like some kind of psyop, which influenced quite well.
Yeah, because you also mentioned, of course, we talked about repositioning of the Tsikhanouskaya office to Poland and also this changing sentiments within Lithuania. Would you say that this like securitization of the border in a way also plays into the hands of like negative sentiment inside Lithuania and yeah, pro-Russian sentiments inside Lithuania? I think, Ilya, you also mentioned, right, that there are now also parties in power Lithuania that are have very different sentiments than a couple of years ago. Can you maybe to go over to you, Ilya, can you give a bit more context there about this? Because it's from for a lot of people, it will be they still think about Lithuania being a very open country towards Belarusians that where a lot of people still live in exile, of course.
Yeah, I think there are three steps to this. In 2020, one of the biggest migration took place was from Belarus to Lithuania and to Vilnius. Yet also exile of a lot of companies that moved from Belarus to Lithuania. They already had offices, but they completely moved to Lithuania. And now you see after 5 years that they want to do something else and they move around. But the second part is that it's what has been reported also is part of a bigger plan of destabilization of the Baltic states. It's quite cheap on Telegram channel. People find it, and if you can earn 500 euro, it's a very small thing that you can do. And via Telegram channels, people find desperate people who can earn some money, but doing a variety of stuff. There've been reports of this Telegram channel operating in Estonia, in Latvia, and also Lithuania. And part of this smuggling of cigarettes, for example, was also found via Telegram channels. So it's very cheap things to do, and it creates a lot of noise and destabilization factors in the Baltic states. Mind you, they're not big countries, 2 million, million and a half, and small events in those countries are quite fast founded and reported. So I think it creates destabilization. It discredits the local community of Belarusians, discredits the local community of Russians even, because also you have the Russian position there living as well. And it creates this semantics around it. You will have, well, look what Belarusians are doing, because it's very hard to disprove who's doing it. And it's very hard to combat that, even if you have the money. It's just a couple events, and the moral can be very different. In regards of Lithuanian government, there have been protests against the Lithuanian government for the last couple of months already in Lithuania, because they've been cutting down on culture and variety of like public media. There have been attacks a bit now. The Russian handbook is at play there. If you look at what they've been doing around Europe in a variety of countries like Slovakia, Hungary, and Poland, for example, things are happening there as well. There's the downsizing of public media, culture, and the youth is protesting. There have been one of the biggest protests recently there as well. And the party is very hardline and doesn't go around where they get the ideas from.
Okay, that's worrisome, and also some news that isn't really reaching, I would say, very much into mainstream Dutch and European media. And what's the main party currently in power in Lithuania who is driving this? Would you
So
know?
there's
Yeah.
been elections, and they're part of the coalition. So there's
Ah,
a
okay.
party, but they're part of the coalition. And I think they said if we go into a coalition, we want this and this as
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
it's
kind of
an
like the local PVV party also.
yeah, it's an kind of an extremist party that pushed some of these policies in the coalition. All right, it's yeah something to follow up, but of course the main thing to follow up and to keep in touch with is the situation in Belarus to keep attention to. Yeah, I would like to move to final question already of this webinar. Time is going quickly, and there's also so much still to discuss. So we should just keep in touch in the coming time and organize more of these things. And also I wanted to end on like more of a positive note, which is always a challenge, of course, with the situation in Belarus and the huge repression and the terrible situation of all the political prisoners that are still imprisoned and should be freed immediately. But also the positive news is that we, and especially yourself, of course, Max and Ilya, are organizing yourselves, are organizing youth and many people across Europe that are working for a democratic and free Belarus and a European future of Belarus that many, many Belarusians also want and show that they want to have a large majority in 2020, as we saw back then. So maybe the final question from my side is, what are you currently organizing to do this, and what can we do more and better? It's always a big question, but of course, many people are also looking from throughout Europe to this webinar and thinking about what can we do. So it would be great to have some ideas already from you, and let's just keep in touch and organizing in the coming time. So yeah, the broad question, what can we do? And would like to start off with one of you, of course, but let's start with you, Max.
Yeah, sure. So actually what I do, I'm trying to organize Belarusian youth like among values of the freedom, solidarity, equality, and justice. So yeah, we are more like focusing like on the education, political education, because yeah, it's kind of hard, a hard thing in Belarus, and also like try to like share our democratic values out inside the country using the media. So also in case of the like European Union space, we can also advocate to engage more Belarusian youth in the situation, in the like trying to like prove that Belarusians also like part of the European space. And also, I said that this kind of migrant crisis on the borders with Poland, Lithuania led to like this kind of construction of the border walls. So, in my opinion, we should like break this iron curtain for Belarusian youth, because as a result, a new generation is growing up in Belarus, many of whom like have never been to the European Union and have no opportunity to visit democratic countries. So we should change this.
Thanks. Thanks. And yeah, we should keep in touch on that and organize much more together on those issues. Ilya, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think for sure, try to keep the borders open between European Union and Belarus. It's very hard to get out, but if you can get out, you saw also in 2010, all the Belarusians went out to European Union and they came back with an idea, I want to live differently. Second of all, look out for local organizations in Belarusians in your neighborhood. What they're doing, there might be an event, you can go and support them. Just go to an event in your area, find Belarusians somewhere in your area and go to their event, and go to Buy Soul or Buy Help or Buy Culture. Feel free to donate, Buy Soul and Buy Help, donate, help people. As we said just now, the expulsion of the political prisoners, they arrived in Poland, they arrived in Ukraine, they have nothing. Any support for them will be always of help. If you don't want that, you can support the Kalinowski Regiment, you can support the work that Maxim is doing, or support your local Belarusians. That's very important. They're doing some projects. It's very hard for some people to start. It's very hard to start from nothing. And a lot of people are doing that. And it's good to keep supporting them, because that's how we can bring back the knowledge back to Belarus once the regime will die. The regime is not endless. The regime will finish. The regime will go. And then we need all the expertise we can have to rebuild the country, because the rebuilding of the country will take, for Maxim and me, probably our lifetime.
Yeah. But it's already yeah, very important start, of course, as you're doing, to connect each other and to work in solidarity now from abroad, but hopefully very soon inside Belarus, working on the democratic and free future of the country, which will definitely come. And yeah, it's a privilege also to work in cooperation with that also from our side, from European Forum. So let's just keep in touch and also keep the news going, keep the attention going on the importance of being strict and being very vocal on what's happening in Belarus and what's happening in violation of human rights, everything that's happening regarding political prisoners, also after the expulsion of the prisoners in the last couple of months. Many people are still there in prison, and we should keep the attention very high on that, also on the political agenda across Europe, which is sometimes difficult, but are important work to do. So thank you so much on being part of that, Ilya and Maxime. It was a pleasure talking today. There's much more still to discuss, but let's just stay in touch. And also to the viewers for this webinar, thank you so much for being here, for attending. Is there anything, Max, Ilya, that you still would like to share, or
Yeah, живе Беларусь.
for sure? Viva Belarus, and thank you so much for today, and we'll keep in touch. For all the viewers, thank you for watching. And share this webinar with whomever you like, and we would love to see you at the following webinars of the European Forum. You can keep in touch with us through our newsletter on the website, europeanforum.net, and also via our LinkedIn. So definitely recommend connecting with us. And if you have any ideas for future webinars or ideas, so put them forward to us and we will organize. Again, thank you, Max. Thank you, Ilya. And we'll speak each other soon. Bye-bye.